It's about that time, but it ain't last year. And I guess I'll try, so I'll leave this mess here.
Hey guys, the Is It Odd or Is It God pod is brought to you exclusively by Plugged In Recovery. If you or somebody you love are struggling with alcoholism or drug addiction and you're looking for a safe and structured environment to help get your life back on track, look no further than www.azsober.com. All of the houses in the Plugged In network are outfitted with new and modern furniture, including memory foam beds and TVs in every room. They want to provide a safe and comfortable environment for you to regain your life and get back on track. Also, all the houses in the Plugged In network are licensed through the DHS and ASRA certified, as well as all the house managers are CPR and Narcan trained to provide the safest environment possible for you to get your life back on track. So if you would like to have some more information or to reserve a bed today, call Wade at 612-505-5494 or visit www.azsober.com. Welcome back to another episode of the Odd or God pod. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Quick, I just actually want to take some time right here. We've been getting so much support on Instagram and TikTok. We do appreciate you guys just liking all of our stuff, reposting it. I know so many people have been finding us on YouTube as well, subscribing to the channel. All of that is the best way to support the podcast, and we really do appreciate it. So thank you guys so much for all the love on social media and just posting our clips and our Instagram reels out there. It means a lot. Today, very special episode. I say that every time. This time I mean it. We have a master on the podcast today, Master Lindu. Did I say that? Master Lindu. We have Lindy joining us. She is just a total badass when it comes to not only just life, martial arts, but specifically recovery, right? She's a major part in the community out here in the Phoenix area. She works in the industry, and I've just heard from so many different females in the program, just nothing but good things about her. And she really is, she walks the walk, right? And not just getting on podcasts like today and talking it. I know personally that she's really doing the deal, and we're very grateful to have her today. So help me welcome Lindy.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah.
It's quite an introduction. Got me all nervous.
Yeah. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about maybe your sobriety date and kind of just like what you have going on in your life, your program, and we'll get the ball rolling. I think as far as the topic goes, we were discussing a little bit earlier with Carlos, and I think we're gonna have kind of a theme of stop making excuses, right? So many times what we do is we allow childhood traumas, we allow all these things in our early life to affect how we go out and interact with the world, affect how we go out and treat people. And we use them as excuses, right? And so I think Lindy's got a great message on this. She's going to kind of pick the ball up and roll with it. But that's what we're going to focus on today is stop making excuses for what you're doing and just start making the changes necessary to correct the behavior. So go ahead, Lindy.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Lindy. My sobriety date is July 4th of 2019. That was not on purpose, I promise. I am an active in a.k.a. and a.k.a. I have multiple sponsees. I have multiple service commitments, as well as opening up the new meeting hall that we're working on. And then also, I focus on recovery softball, so I get to travel a lot with recovery softball and being able to meet people not only in Arizona, but all around the states of people active in any type of program. So
right.
It's really, really cool. But yeah, I also work in recovery. I've worked in recovery since I was 6 months sober. So I've been actively doing that and making sure it's not my program, which is a big part of working in recovery, is making sure it's not my program and consistently, staying active, So yeah.
Awesome. No, we appreciate it. That's quite a list of accolades you got going there. And just to touch on something that you said, two things actually. Shameless plug. We are plugging. New meeting hall is opening up. Lindy and I are both on the board, really just trying to drive things forward. We're touring locations. We're getting really close to getting in the negotiation stage. But here's the deal. We got a fundraiser next Saturday, August 26th at the River Source IOP building. What is it, Lindy?
It's 2325 West Guadalupe Road. It's off of the cross streets of Country Club in Guadalupe.
Country Club in Guadalupe. And why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what we have going on?
Oh, it's going to be a casino night.
Casino night!
Woo! So yeah, it's going to be a casino night. We're going to have a bunch of different tables, different types of events. Left, right, center, which is one of my favorites. I know it's really not normally what you see.
What is Left, Right, Center?
I mean, it's a dice game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a dice game, but it's really fun. It's really, you just throw it and it's a left, right, center, and it goes around in a big circle. And I don't know why, it's one of the most entertaining games for me.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, we'll have left, right, center for those of you who know what that is. And also, I think the main attraction here is the poker tournament. There's a $30 buy-in poker tournament that's going to be going on. There are unlimited rebuys in the first round, and if you get knocked out, don't worry. We'll have spades tables, left, right, center games like we're talking about. And if not anything, just stop by. There's a 50-50 raffle that we're going to be doing. Yeah. All the proceeds of this is going to go towards helping get chairs and supplies for the new meeting hall that we're opening up to help the Chandler area. So, yeah, that's great. Stop by. I'll probably put something on the screen here with some more information as well.
A little flyer right here.
And then second thing that you kind of touched on that I think could be a little bit of our first talking point is you work in the industry. And I know a lot of people, when they get sober and they get into recovery, that's a very popular route to go, right? Mm-hmm. But you said something that's so important, that it isn't your program. Right. And I know just personally, I've never worked in the industry, but just being in sober living and being around in the community long enough, I know so many people who are, BHTs, admissions, right? All of these different positions that you can get with treatment centers. But sometimes that line gets crossed, right? Where
100%.
This isn't really my program. This isn't what's going to keep me sober,
Absolutely.
Right? This is a way to give back to the community, but it's not my program. Maybe you'd like to touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that we push when we're in the program is service work, and a lot of people mistake the fact that they're working in treatment as I'm being of service constantly because I'm working. I'm like, but no, you're getting paid for one. But for two, it's not about what you're doing there. Like, they're in a lockdown facility. It's about what you do when they get out of there, right? And being a part of the program is a completely separate entity. There's people that work in treatment that aren't in any type of recovery either. So it's completely a separate thing, and I am guilty of it. When I first started working in recovery, I mistaked it as my program, and then I got miserable, and I'm like, why am I miserable? And then I called my sponsor after not talking to her for like 3 weeks. She's like, I don't know, maybe because you're not calling me, doing your steps, or actively working in the program or going to meetings. And I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense, So a lot of the time it's people mistake it, and I get it. It's understandable. I've experienced it. So I understand the mistaking working in treatment for being your own program, but it's kind of your cup has to be full to be able to pour into everybody else's. And if you're not working your own program, you're not going to be able to pour into everybody else's cup, just like you would even just only being in the program, but let alone working and being in the program.
Right. Yeah. And that you bring up such a good point, because in some of the literature we use in the 12-step program, it says, you can't transmit something that you haven't got.
Exactly.
Right. And so we have to make sure that spiritually we're on a firm foundation before going out and trying to help others. But let's kind of flip the coin. Okay. Let's talk about the other side of it. How is, you work a strong program, you're involved at a high level in all of these different things in the community. Having that experience in the program, how does that help you, in your position of working in recovery?
Oh, I don't feel like a hypocrite. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I get to work with these people and talk from experience. You know what I mean? And talk from experience, talk from the fact that I'm actively doing it. And also, like, whenever I go to meetings, if I even see clients there, I'm like, hey, like, you see that this is what's working,
Mm-hmm.
So it's about being an example, and I think that's the big thing about working in treatment too, is if we're being an example for them and they're seeing us in our day-to-day life, they're going to see that it's actually working for somebody. And like, not only that, I'm happy, I'm not miserable. And I have those two factors into my life. I have a beautiful job where I get to give back, but I also have this beautiful recovery that I get to give back as well.
Right. No, that's great. I think that kind of is right along the lines of like attraction rather than promotion.
100%.
When they see you, living a fulfilling life and doing all those right things, they almost gravitate towards you because that's what they would want as well. Now, I know, you are part of a network of sober livings as well. You help out as a co-director for the female program. Like, I know working in recovery, like you said, that's your job, right? That's when you clock in, you go to your job. And this is something that is also kind of like a job, but it's almost like supplemental to that, if that's the right word to use. And how does that kind of add to your program as well, as far as seeing people from day one through treatment, but then also it's like a lot of us go to sober living as well. So you're kind of like hitting people at every stage.
I never really thought of it like that.
You really are like very involved with all these females on like every stage of like the recovery journey. Like, how does that work out as far as, you know, helping with the sober livings and being in that position? I
call it a win-win. I mean, it's a win-win in the sense of like I get to do both. I love what I do. I love what I do for my job because it also is giving back. I just know how to separate the two as well. When it comes to being a part of Plugged In Recovery is what you're talking about. I mean, you're right. Getting to see people walk through the journey and seeing them from day one, because like I'm an admissions coordinator. So there's girls that I've seen. I've literally talked to them when they're high, got them through the door, and then helped them get into sober living. And then now I'm seeing them move out of sober living and start a life. And it's one of the most rewarding experiences. You like, even knowing and not to say like it's hits my ego or anything like that, but to like see that and be able to witness such a beautiful journey for other people, it's just miraculous. It's a whole different high. You know, it's what feeds that part of me that was the hole that I was trying to fill when I was getting high. Like seeing them go from day one to, you know, a year or even 2. And, you know, I've experienced that too, also with sponsees, but like seeing that change is there's nothing like it. It's unexplainable almost.
That's great. Awesome. Well, and that's so great that you shared that with us, because I do feel that a lot of people that are listening into the podcast and kind of seeing our TikToks and our reels, a lot of them are working in treatment and have that kind of experience. So I think that's going to resonate a lot with them and maybe even, you know, help them out. So kind of just circling back to the topic, right, where it's like, let's focus on not letting our past experiences and traumas dictate how we currently live, right? And not using them as excuses for what we do and how we treat people. I know you've got a great like story on everything that happened in your life that you allowed for so long to affect how you lived your life. Maybe just share with us a little bit about that, and then, you know, kind of what that looked like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was raised with my parents were separated. My father is a drug addict, and my mom was an alcoholic. So I always felt like I was guilty of a circumstance, right? Like because of all these things that were happening in my life, the trauma, like, you know, there's multiple, you know, life and death situations that I was put into at a very, very young age. And I used to blame the fact that this is what life handed to me at even such a young age, that this is the reason why I am the way I am. And that was my excuse for getting out of any type of, or getting into any type of recovery, I should say. Like I always looked at the fact that, okay, because this is how my life has been lined up, I'm meant to be a drug addict. I'm meant to live this life tweaking in a trailer by myself, wanting to die. Like this is what I deserve, because I don't know anything different. And now I get to realize that. And luckily, between working a program and having the people that I've had around me and having a higher power to really confide in and truly believe in, I saw that doesn't have to be my life. Just because that was my circumstance when I was younger doesn't mean that that's going to be the circumstance for the rest of my life. I have the ability to change that. I just have to be willing to do the work, have a higher power that I trust when I'm doing that work, and also have people around me that hold me accountable to make sure I'm doing the next right thing.
Right. No, and that's so good. And it's just, it really is difficult. It took me quite some time personally to understand that concept of like, even if I was a victim in a situation, like my part in it is that I'm allowing it to still affect me. I'm still holding on to it. And I'm like, I wanted to harvest all of these resentments and grudges in my life. Like, cause I felt like I was so justified. Like I'm allowed to have these feelings.
That's the big word right there, justified. Like we all think that we can continue to justify everything that happened. And it's like, that's not how you're going to get out of this. If you truly want your life to change, you can't keep justifying. You have to take responsibility for what you need to take responsibility for and continue to move forward. And do the 4-step, focus on the resentments, learn the resentment and where it's like not just the surface level, like I'm mad at my dad. No, it's like, why am I mad at my dad? Break that down, and break that down.
Get brutally honest too. You know what I mean? It's like, put all of the fear of judgment, all of the fear of that aside and just get honest, you know?
And my old sponsor, she said it perfectly. She's like, get nasty and nitty gritty with it. Like, she's like, those dark thoughts that you think nobody else thinks, I want you to say them. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty dark. So like, and it's scary, right? Because you're scared of judgment and you're scared of, what's going to actually happen once you say it out loud almost. And the truth is that that's where the freedom comes from. It's like looking at the nasty nitty gritty thoughts that I have in my head and looking at those, facing those and being able to be like, okay, now that I put this on the table, what the hell am I going to do about it?
Right.
Like, because I have to do something about this if I want my life to change.
100%. And I know too, like a big thing is like, I always thought that if I got honest about all those like crazy thoughts and all those secrets that like I was going to be judged, but the complete opposite happened. Like when I went through that, one, not only was I accepted, right, by the person that was helping me go through my own program, but also you get a level of respect, right? Absolutely. Especially when you're in recovery and you're with other addicts and alcoholics that have been through very similar things. When you get honest and you really just wear your heart on your sleeve and you put it all out there, that's where you get the respect. That's where the acceptance comes from, because now we're focusing on the similarities, not the differences. Yeah. But if we can't get honest and put it all out there, then that's going to be the inhibitor, right? That's what blocks you off from that.
Oh, 100%. There's a lot of people, it's just like, it's that fear of judgment. And it's like this program was specifically created to be a judgment-free zone. And it doesn't have to be with everybody, right? That's why we have a sponsor or a mentor or a spiritual advisor to be able to share that with, because you don't have to share it with everybody, but you need to share it with somebody, right? Just to get that weight off of your shoulder, that weight off of your heart, so that you're able to grow and learn how to live this life without getting those things out. And we have so many things that sit inwards and like weigh on us, and like we don't even know that they weigh on us until we say it out loud. I know whenever I got to that part of my doing my steps where it was like, tell me what it is, and I'm like, and I took a deep breath and I said it out loud. I was like, oh my God, I felt 50 pounds lighter, and I'm already like I already weigh nothing. So I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a freeing experience. And that's how you get closer to your higher power. That's how you get closer to other people. Like, and now it's one of those things that the one thing I wouldn't say for years is something that my sponsee tells me something, and I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, by the way, this happened to me too, so I get it. And then and it just shoots out of my mouth, right? And it's like, because I've learned to accept it. And it's like, I have to accept these things so I can grow from these things.
Right. And you can't accept something that you don't first acknowledge.
Exactly.
You have to acknowledge it first in order for any work to get done.
100%.
So I love that. That was a great message. That was really great. For you listeners, you're welcome. that was really great. I told you, Master Lindu, she's bringing the heat. So, no, thank you so much for that. And like, kind of going side to side with this, right? Where, yes, we have to acknowledge all of these resentments, and but we kind of touched on earlier, justified, right? That word where it's like, when we feel wholeheartedly, every fiber of our being feels like, I have a right to feel this way. I was a victim. I didn't play a part in this. And it's like, and you're pushing everything off, but it was obviously still affecting how we live our lives. Mm-hmm. How difficult was it for you to kind of wrap your head around that concept? Like, did somebody like help you through that? Or can you just kind of give us some advice on how to deal with those kinds of things where we feel like we're 100% in the right, but we're not, we actually aren't, you know?
No, I mean, I'm not going to lie. In the beginning, it was like, I looked at my sponsor and I said, fuck you. Like, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you want me to like, I feel justified in this. Like, what do you mean that I have to like find my part in this situation that was obviously super traumatic for me, that I had no control over? And she looked at me and she's like, do you want to be free? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, of course I do. And she's like, well, then this is what you got to do. You have to dig deep into this. And And by knowing how bad and how that desperation of wanting that freedom was, that I knew I had to look at it. And a lot of those times in those situations, your part is the fact that you're continuing to hold on to it, that you're continuing not to speak with, your sponsor, your therapist, do trauma work, write a letter and burn it, right? All these type of things that you can do that are meditative. And sometimes it's all of those, sometimes it's not just writing a letter and burning it and being like, all right, I'm done. Sometimes it's actively speaking about it for years until that weight becomes less and less and less. It's not something that happens overnight. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you that it happens overnight. It is a process, and it is something that it might come up even later in the years. You can think you're over it for a couple years, and then it gets brought back up. But luckily, if you have a program that you're working, or a therapist or whoever you're speaking with about this, you have another outlet to continue to work on that and not let it continue to control your life.
Right. And there's a concept that is very popular in some recovery programs, that like pray for your enemies, right? Like if somebody hurt you that badly, or you're still holding on to something that happened to you years ago, pray for them. Continuously praying for them, everything that you would want for yourself. What's your experience with that? Or like, do you have any advice for any of our listeners who may be early in sobriety and are struggling with that concept?
Yes, prayer, obviously. Even if you're down on your knees and you're grinding your teeth while you're saying it, say it, and even if it takes you 30 minutes while you're on your knees to say it, and I promise you, the more that you continue to put that out there and continue to pray for those people that harmed you, the less and less it's going to be, and the more that you're actually going to feel that way. I know I had an experience with one specific person that's how I felt. I was grinding my teeth as I'm praying for them, and I'm like cursing out my sponsor in my head because she's making me do it. And I'm like, I'm going to do what she says. Right. But the more and more I did it, the more and more I genuinely felt that way. And it's also, to go back to selfishness, it's for yourself, and it's like, I don't need to hold on to this anymore, because if I continue to love you and love those around me, then the only thing that's going to happen in my life is I'm going to continue to grow. No matter what religion, no matter what spirituality that you are, the one thing that they all have in common is love and service. That's one thing when I did my research on all that, like Buddhism, Christianity, all of it, it's love and service. So if all of these religions that are from all around the world, right, have these two things in common, maybe there's something to that, right? So if I have to love thy enemy to be able to grow, then I'm going to do so. Because it's for them and for me. Even though at first it may start off just for me, eventually that feeling turns into it's for both of us.
Right. Yeah. The perspective kind of shifts after you repeatedly do it. Obviously, it's not going to be as easy as, I forgive this person because I prayed for them one time.
Yeah.
But it's like, and it's not even like, it's not fake it till you make it, right?
No.
It's like, do the deal until it's real.
Yeah.
It's like, even if you don't wholeheartedly mean it, you can't just fake it, right? It has to be something where it's like, you have to have some sort of hope or faith that it is going to get better, or that one day you will meet it, or you will be able to get over it, right? But it's like, you can't necessarily hold on to this idea that you're just going to do something but not actually have a different outcome eventually.
And what I like to say is, like, all of us have a bit of good in us, right? And in the beginning, I know for me, it seemed like the bad was outweighed the good, but like I had to focus on that good in me that really didn't want anything bad for this person. Like they say I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. That bit of good in me I had to hold on to and be like, no, like the good person in me knows this is what the right thing to do. And even if that's a little bit of a good person that's left in me, I got to hold on to that little bit of that good person that's willing to do that for them and myself.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. To kind of switch gears here a little bit, I want to talk about something where in the recovery community, we call this stage two of recovery. It's emotional sobriety. And this gets brought up quite a bit, and I don't think I 100% fully understand it, and I'm sure a lot of people kind of that resonates with them, but it does get brought up where it's like, well, where are you at like in your emotional sobriety, right? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, well, I mean, it's been a while since you drank or you've done drugs, right? And I'm like, yeah, but like, where are you at with your emotional sobriety? I'm like, I don't know. I feel pretty good, right? Well, maybe walk us through that. I know you've got some really good information that could be really helpful for me and for our listeners.
Yeah. Emotional sobriety can also be like explained as like your mental health after you're free from the substance, right? Like, I think for the first couple years, when you're first getting sober, it's just you're so hyper focused on not getting high, not drinking, not doing whatever you're addicted to, right? Whether it's sex, gambling, whatever it may be, and you're so hyper focused on it that once you start to feel the freedom and you start to like, stop thinking about getting high less, and everything, life starts to, lay out, whether it's the job, the life, whatever it may be, then you get to this point where it's like, okay, I don't want to get high, I don't want to drink, but now I'm stuck with me, right? And me was the reason I got into drugs to begin with. So it's, what do I have to do for that long-term sobriety? I have to figure out, because as they say, drugs and alcohol are only a symptom of our use, right? So of ourselves. So I have to figure out what's going on with me that caused me to use or continue to use, right? And the emotional sobriety is digging deep into our core beliefs, into our fears, into our resentments, into our circumstance, and learning those patterns that created this toxicity that brought us to drugs and alcohol. And that's one of the things that once you reach a certain point, I feel, in sobriety, and for some people it's sooner or it's later, is that I need to know, what's going on with me, whether it's my character defects, am I still a bitch all the time to people when I have no right to be? Am I still pushing people away that are trying to be there for me? For me, it was a big thing is that I like to do everything by myself. I'm a very independent woman, and some people would call that a trauma response, because I've done a lot of things by myself for many years, and that was a big one for me, is learning that I can accept help, that I can accept to tell other people my problems. And even though I did that so easily in the beginning, it was all about the substance, right? And now it's like, okay, I don't think about the substance, but I think about the problems that I'm having, whether it's in my personal relationships, and I don't know how to handle personal relationships, because my automatic response before I was getting high and when I was getting high is, all right, bye-bye, throw you away, right? And now it's like, okay, now I have this opportunity with this new life that I've been given, and I have these people in my life to mentor me on how to handle these type of situations to help myself grow, by, handling it with grace, knowing when to apologize, putting my ego to the side so I can be there for the next person, or that I can take the advice from somebody instead of being like, no, what I think and what I know is best, and playing God. So that's where I kind of feel the emotional sobriety, or the stage 2 of recovery is like, now I have the drugs gone, now I'm stuck with me. What am I going to do about it? Because I need to fix this. Drugs and alcohol are gone. Now it's time to fix this, and every pattern that I've known before.
Yeah, mind, body, and spirit.
Mind, body, and spirit.
That's great. And to kind of, I want to get your thoughts on this too, right? Because seeking outside help, right? When it comes to our mental health and things, there are some times where just being in a recovery program may not be the highest level of care that you need. And I know personally, like, I see a therapist and I seek outside help as well to deal with these kind of things. Can you just touch on, how that's helped you in your life as well, as far as just adding to that emotional sobriety?
Oh, it's helped immensely, right? Like, I still have a therapist to this day. People were like, you still see a therapist? I'm like, yeah, I see a therapist because, I'm still fixing me. It doesn't matter how much time has passed, I'm still fixing me, right? And whether it's seeking a therapist, for some people it's that they're free from the substance, but they have significant trauma that they experienced when they're younger. So doing things like EMDR, brain spotting, things along those lines to help them continue to grow past like I said, everything that we were taught before, to be able to be this new version of myself. The definition of a spiritual experience, right, is that change. And change doesn't happen overnight, and it happens with help in all different directions. And like I said, therapists, mentors, not only like people in your fellowship, going to people that have had similar experiences. There's so many resources out there, and it's crazy how many people don't jump on them, because either that they're letting their ego get in the way, which is very, very common. I'm guilty. Or it's the fact that they're terrified. and they're terrified of getting help. They're terrified of facing those old demons, and it's okay to want to be better, and that it's okay to put your guard down a little bit to be able to progress.
It's okay to ask for help.
100%.
And that's so big. And excuse me, sorry listeners, I think that might have been loud for you. I know I talk about this with every guest on the podcast. I think I'm going to continue it because I've been finding that I'm really interested in everyone's take. Is like meditation specifically. It gets brought up so much where it's like, well, you have to pray and meditate, right? And I remember just being like, well, what does that mean? I have to like sit there in silence for 30 minutes, or like, do I listen? Do I have someone guide me? Do I just listen to like weird noises? What is that, right? And after talking with so many different people, meditation is so different for everybody, right? It's one of those practices where it's just like, no matter what you're doing, the main goal is to just center yourself and ground yourself in that present moment in time. How do you meditate, or like, what does that look like in your life?
Meditation, like you said, it comes in all different forms. I know a lot of people that use the gym for meditation, that do the morning and night meditations. Fuck it meditations that are actually on YouTube. People have different ways of meditating, and they're all different. And it's okay to experiment and find out which one works for you. For me personally, like I said, I play softball. That's one of the times that I kind of step out of myself and be able to like just be focused on the game at hand, and then I'm not thinking. Sometimes I don't want to think about my recovery, right? Sometimes I'm like, I'm not thinking about my recovery, I'm not thinking about my family life, I'm not thinking about all the other stuff I have going on. I'm just present in that moment, right? That's one thing that's for me. But also I meditate at home, whether it's gongs. A big thing that I like to do is I like to smudge. It was taught to me. I love smudging. I like to smudge before I meditate because it just relaxes me. There's so many different types, and those are the ones that work for me. As well as sometimes I'm a weirdo. I'll lay on the floor, like directly on the floor, and I just put my hands down, and like I just try and be centered with the ground. Yeah. Something about the hard surface on the ground just makes me feel like present. And like if I do it in a bed or something like that, I'm like, no, I'm gonna fall asleep. Yeah. So like something about laying on the ground just like makes me feel like I'm in that present moment.
That's great. Question: How big is the gong?
It's a little one.
Little baby gong.
It's a little one.
Sweet.
I need to get a bigger one. They're expensive.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome. Yeah, and to kind of touch on that, I remember I knew this guy, and like his major thing with meditation is he would go barefoot into grass. He'd just be like, yeah, I just put my feet in the grass and I feel centered with the earth. I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah, one of the things that I have my sponsees do, besides the other meditation is when they write I have them rewrite a third step prayer for themselves. Yeah. And I tell them to go to their most meditative spot to say their version of the third step prayer, so that they're able to feel as centered with their version of the prayer for themselves. And I've always gotten such positive feedback on that.
That's interesting. I've never heard that. Never heard that method before. Wow. Mm-hmm. To our listeners, well, you're welcome again. Master Lindu strikes again. That's so good. That's so good. Carlos, what's the other thing that we ask all our guests? Routine, your daily routine. So this is so big, right? It's like we have to, for the longest time, right? We lived such undisciplined lives, right? And like part of the effectiveness, I think, of like treatment centers and sober living and like outpatient programs is they give you a rigid structure of like how your day is going to go, right? They say, and what you're doing, and you can't really understand this. Like when you're in rehab, I remember being in rehab, like, I don't get this, right? But if you are fortunate enough to continue on and like seek extra help outside of a residential center and like join the community and live in sober living, you start getting that clarity, and it starts, the light bulb goes off. You're like, what they were doing was they were breaking down, first they were squashing the notion that what we were doing was without consequence, right? They were making us aware that how you're living your life is affecting more than just you. Right. And that's the selfishness and that self-centeredness that we become aware of. But what they're also doing is they're programming us to say, you do need to wake up at a certain time. Like, you need to make your bed. You need to eat 3 meals a day. You need to brush your teeth. You need to do all these things that, like, these are what normal people are doing, right? It's like your addict and alcoholic life, like me before rehab, was not a functioning member of society. I was not an actual adult, right? And so a lot of rehab and IOP and sober living, especially sober living, like, do a chore. Like, you have to make your bed. You have to clean up. No, you're not allowed to eat your dinner in your bed. You're not allowed, like, you've got to mop the floor. It's like all of these things. It's like you have to share. You have to share this space. This isn't just your space. All of these things, like, it sounds silly. At like 24 years old, I was learning that.
Yeah.
I was like learning these things that I should have already known. But as a full grown adult, like, I didn't have that structure in my life. Right. And so that's like, I love talking about like your routine, right? What has gotten you up to this point, right? All the years of sobriety, all of like you finding more fulfilling, like a more fulfilling life, all of the successes you've had. I'm sure you have a routine that you keep to, you know, continue on with that. Like, what does that look like?
The thing about routine too is like you have to make sure that you're also comfortable with change in your routine. Because when I first got sober, I had such a set routine: wake up in the morning, make my bed, go make breakfast, and I would make breakfast for the other girls in the house. I liked being the mom in the house. And then I would go to IOP, then I go to IOP, and then I would go to the gym, go to a meeting, then go home. Right, that was and as that's progressed, you know, life's changed. Whether it's different jobs, different hours of my job. You know, whether it's, you know, relationship sports or different meetings that I try, I do have a routine now. You know, I wake up in the morning. I luckily have a significant other who knows I like caffeine in the morning, and he gets me my caffeine. Once I'm done with that, then I get up, I get dressed for the day. I work remote right now, so I go to my desk. Make sure I don't sit in bed, make sure I don't sit on the couch, and I work at my desk. I work for my hours. I get up and I make sure that I take that hour break, or not hour, but half hour break, even at home, to go eat. And then when I'm done, whether depending on the day, right? Because I do have that routine of I go to this meeting this day, I go to this thing this day, and I do those things at night. And so I have this very set way that I have of living, but it sometimes changes, you know, like yesterday I went to a concert, right? So like I didn't go to my normal meeting. Don't do that. But like I didn't go to my normal meeting, but it didn't throw me off, right? Because I know that's one thing that's scary too, is a lot of times, and I've seen it from working in treatment as well as working in sober living, is like we create this routine in treatment, and when we're in sober living, and then we get a job and it gets thrown out of whack, and all of a sudden it's just like scatterbrain, like, oh my goodness, I just set this routine, and now it's like, no, we have to adjust. We create a new thing, whether it's writing it down or you know, writing it down, creating a schedule, or anything along those lines.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You good, dude?
She was on a roll and I'm just choking on myself.
You were trying so hard not to joke.
I'm like fighting for my life over here. I'm so sorry. You were on such a roll.
No, it's good. It's good. Probably need to cut me off anyway.
Yeah, no, that's so good. For you listeners, that's another reason why you should really find us on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. You're going to want to see what's going on in here. You brought something up, though, and I think this is also important, mostly for like people who have some time, is we talked about like your job and working in recovery, not supplementing your program, but also like what I see a lot, and I'm a victim of this as well, where I almost supplemented my life for the program. It's like, you know, there came a point where it's like, I'm like living in the rooms and like all I can talk about is like my recovery and all these things, right? And then I was like unhappy, and then like it was brought up to me by my sponsor at the time, where I was just like, well, what have you been doing to like enlarge with your personal relationships? What are you doing romantically? What are you doing as a hobby? What are you doing for fun? I'm like, all these other things that are like fundamental things that we need as humans in order to live a fulfilling life. I was supplementing all of those with just more involvement in the program, right? And so it's like, it is okay to like, you know, yes, you have like your set meeting schedule, you have your routine, but it's like you also have to make time for yourself, make time for exercise, make time for personal relationships, make time for a significant other, all these other things that add to a fulfilling life. Like what, like how did you find that balance of, you know, work, life, recovery, all these things?
I think it goes back to the stage 2 of recovery too. Is like, I think in the beginning it's so crucial for us to create those patterns of going to meetings and calling our sponsor every day. And then when we progress, we get to a point where, you know, life gets lifey and normal life starts to like take over, right? Like I like the recovery life, normal life, but like it takes over, right? And it is finding a balance. I think everything in recovery and life is about balance. But it was a slow progression, right? Like I allowed myself, like, okay, I don't need to go to 6 meetings a week. You know, I have these 3 that feed me. I'm going to go to these 3. All right. I have a concert that I get invited to and I'm going to miss my meeting. I'm like, you know, did I hit my other ones this week? Cool. I can go to a concert with one of my friends who's in recovery, mind you. You know, I can go to this concert and have a good time because you're right. Like we do get to a point, and I think everybody with significant time gets to it where it's just like there's almost too much recovery, and it's like it's okay to have a normal life. You know, I have like at first it was I only had friends in recovery. I only went to meetings. I only hung out with anybody that was associated to anything with recovery, and I almost like had like a ick for like normal people. Like it was,
Like,
I was like, I don't know how to interact with you. And because like, you're right. Like I was so engulfed in my recovery that I didn't know even how to like act with normal people. And I wouldn't even say normal people, just other people. Right. And when I started to see that, when I noticed that, I was like, it's okay. Right. And it was sticking to the concept that I've learned of the principles as well, though, is like making sure that I have the right people around me. Like if I'm going to hang out with people that are in recovery, I have to make sure there's still people that are feeding into my life. Yeah. You know, if I'm going to go to a concert, I'm going to go and have a good time and be present in the moment, right? Like another form of meditation, you know, I'm going to go and have a good time. I'm going to go play softball. I had when I started this recovery journey, all my friends were in recovery. 2 of my friends that I'm the closest to now aren't in recovery. You know, and it's a beautiful thing because I'm able to be there for them and that they're able to be there for me. I have a relationship, and even though, yes, he's in recovery himself, we refuse to talk about recovery with each other. His program's his, mine's mine, and that's that. I'm not allowed to tell him to call his sponsor or anything like that, and we get to be present in the moment with each other. So it's a progression thing, but always when you're making those steps of like bringing into the normalcy is like communicating with your sponsors and mentors around you so that, you know, you're doing the healthy thing, that you're not jumping into, you know, I'm not going, you know, for me who used to be a raver, I'm not going to a rave by myself with a bunch of people that are, you know, getting high, that I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do this with a bunch of recovery friends. You know, it's just a step-by-step process and running it by people around you and allowing yourself the grace of knowing you're going to be okay because you do have this program to back you up. And not only that, most importantly, you have a higher power that's there to back you up. And as long as you're doing the next right thing, then the next right thing is going to happen to you.
Right. Yeah. I remember too, like when I fresh out of like rehab, I almost felt like I had to like hide from like alcohol. I'm like, oh my God, I can't go to this restaurant. It's got a bar in it. Like it's against the rules, blah, blah, blah. It's like, and then, you know, you work.
Well, no, I think that's that's normal for anybody, right? Like we get so like that fear, and it's in a weird way, it's a healthy fear, right? Like we don't want to be jumping back to the trap house, you know, being like, I just wanted to see my friends, you know.
No, I can hang out here. I got higher power.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's what I'm saying. Like it's good to have those people to run it by you, and like, you know, it's baby steps, and it's okay to take those baby steps. Like, you know, I had multiple friends that were in recovery that I knew from before that like wanted to hang out. And at first I was like, no, I can't. Like, I'm not saying you're going to pressure me or anything like that. It's nothing against you. It's just for myself right now. I just know I'm not ready for it. And then when I got to a certain phase and I spoke to my sponsor about it, I'm like, hey, like, I really want to go to dinner with this person. You know, I know that I've partied with them in the past. She's like, okay, go to brunch during the day. And like say, hey, do you want to go have a cup of coffee? You know, set your boundaries up front, you know, because you don't have to stop your life just because you're in recovery. Right. But it is a progression and not throwing yourselves to the wolves really quick.
Yeah, it's like we're not saying like you just got out of rehab. It's a great idea to like go to a bar, right? Yeah. But it's like when we work a program like and especially in a program I work where it's like they kind of explain it as like you're placed in a position of neutrality, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like I can go where any other free man can go. as long as there's a good reason to be there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like that concept became more clear to me just as like my mind cleared up and like I started building a connection with God and like really like working the program. But it's like I'm not running away from drugs and alcohol. I'm just simply growing towards other things. I'm just growing spiritually, and that's not part of my journey.
You know, and that's something like to speak off of experience, right? Like I had a friend who passed away shortly after I got out of treatment, and it was a friend that I used to party with. And I went to the funeral, and at one point I'm getting walked to the back with a couple of my friends, and like I wasn't even thinking anything of it, right? And they like pulled out drugs, and I was like, I got we're at a funeral. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm freaking out, right? And you know, I was just I was like, cool, now I'm in this situation. I need to get out of this situation. Like I knew what to do. But also like when it came to that situation, I was able to pull myself out of it because I knew walking into the situation when I was walking into, like I called my sponsor before I went to that funeral. And when that happened, I'm very lucky that I was able to walk away from that. But like sometimes situations happen and you can't control it. You know, you can't control other people's actions, but it's not like I left, I called my sponsor, I got in my car and I drove home.
Yeah.
Paid my respects and I walked away, right? So like don't put yourself in that situation, right? But like sometimes life circumstances happen, and I've seen it happen with a lot of people. I've had sponsees call me where they're like, I was at a family function and my family just started smoking weed and doing lines, and I'm like, oh, okay, your family gets down, but okay,
your family's partying.
Well, no, but it's a realistic situation. Like this is things that happen, and like you know, I'm like, you did the right thing. I'm like, you called me. You left the situation and you did what you were supposed to do. Like it's your family. Like you want to go to family events, right? So like it's things like that are going to happen, and you just have to know what the steps are to be able to take care of yourself in those type of situations.
Right. And I always say like those kind of situations are like the glaring, they're like the obvious reasons why the main part of working a program is the spiritual aspect of it too, right? Because it's like you can't take your counselor with you everywhere. You can't take your sponsor with you everywhere. You can't take your recovery buddy with you everywhere. But the one thing that goes with you everywhere in your life is your relationship with your higher power and that spiritual connection. So when you are, you know, in those situations, you're able to maintain that position of neutrality, and you're able to maintain and stay true to yourself and understand that because you put in the work to build that relationship.
Absolutely.
Because like you just can't rely on all those external things without building that spiritual connection.
100%. And with building that spiritual connection, right? Like when I had that experience, like that spiritual connection is what made me do the right thing in that moment, right? It's always the next right thing. And I knew that like, okay, I thought of it as like, all right, I call my higher power HP. And I was like, all right, HP, I see what you're doing here. Love you. I'm going to do what you would want me to do. And I'm going to walk away from this situation because I trust you. And I trust that, you know, this was just supposed to be a learning curve. And I'm going to take whatever I can out of this situation and continue to move forward.
That's so awesome. I just thought of such a great episode name, Master Lindu and HP. The dynamic duo. That's so awesome. Well, I mean, yeah, we've talked about so many good things. I feel like I'm going to enjoy watching this podcast afterwards. That's awesome. And we do appreciate you, taking some time out of your day to join us. Another just reminder, that is next Saturday, August 26th, the Riversource IOP building, a casino night. All proceeds are going towards the new meeting hall opening up in Chandler. If you want some more information, just find the Facebook page. It's Any Length Meeting Hall.
Links.
Is that right?
Any links?
Yeah, Any Lengths Meeting Hall on Facebook. Like us, add me on Facebook. I'll send you the information.
Me too.
At Lindy as well. But yeah, thank you so much for stopping by and just kind of sharing some of that experience and message with us, and just helping us kick it off. Like, you're going to be able to look back on this episode and be like, I was there before they had cool chairs and a cool neon sign.
Yeah, chairs. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I complain about the chairs every episode until our sponsor, Plugged in Recovery. Yeah, sponsor, we need new chairs. No, just kidding.
I'll talk to him.
Yeah, we'll have a chat. No, they've been great. They're great supporters of the podcast. And again, guys, like if you or somebody you love are struggling and you're looking for a sober living environment, you can visit www.azsober.com, or you can call Wade, 612-505-5494. Thank you again, Lindy, for stopping by. We really do appreciate it. Guys, remember, we are a weekly podcast, so like, comment, and subscribe. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and Facebook. We are on all streaming platforms, Otter God Pod. Thank you. Oh, follow us on TikTok at Otter God. We're posting a lot of good stuff, trust me. And so, yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Lindy. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.